Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We go to our friend Jenny Beth Martin, Tea Party Patriots Action. Good morning, Jenny Beth.
Good morning. It's so good to be with you.
Good to have you here in Trump country. So let's talk about it. The president announces his reelection. Your thoughts on the reaction?
Oh, I think the crowd was amazing. I have heard from people who went down to the event, even from other states, and they are just so glad to see that the president is running for reelection. They want him to continue the economic growth that we have seen under him, to work to protect the Supreme Court, and to continue to roll back regulations and shrink the size of government. So they're excited about this. He's obviously going to have a challenge. Every presidential election is a challenge, and we will all have to roll up our sleeves and get involved. But he has a great record to stand on.
Well, and then you take a look at coming up next week. We've got 21 candidates. Of course, they're going to be in South Carolina this weekend. Then we've got the big debates. Your thoughts on the alternative to President Trump from the Libs?
I think that it will be interesting to see who the liberals ultimately nominate. And it's hard to tell right now who it'll be, because I think we're going to see blips in the polling where somebody spikes and then they go back down. And it just as different candidates get attention. The president took jabs at Joe Biden, and I think there's reason to be concerned about him, mostly because he has a strong name ID, but so does Bernie Sanders and other candidates. So what concerns me the most is that on the left, the Democrats are all trying to out-liberal one another, or not even liberal. It's really be more socialist. Who can be the most socialist? And they wind up painting two very distinct paths for our country's future. Are we going to choose a socialist path, or are we going to choose a path with Donald Trump that gives us more freedom and economic growth? The policies that we're hearing from the Democrats will spin us into oblivion, and we simply cannot afford to do that.
Indeed, of course. Then we have the impeachment rumblings in the House. You also have the idea that the House wants, the libs want to put in some more liberal justices. You've written about this recently on Fox News. Let's start with the judges.
Well, the judges. We know that President Trump, as he was candidate, put forth a list of 11 different possible judges who he would potentially nominate to the Supreme Court. And he made that list very public. The Democrats right now are apparently putting together their own list, and yet the Democrats, who always demand transparency and openness from their opponents, from us, the political right, they're not making that list public right now. They're keeping it very private. It's a secret list. We don't know who's on it, and it can lead us to think that these must be very liberal judges who they are considering. But it's very interesting that they're really just showing their hypocrisy, because they always demand transparency, yet they're creating this list and have a list together that they've put together that is secret. And I think that we should all be demanding that they release their list of potential nominees so we can evaluate those as we head into the campaign season.
I would agree with you on that. And getting back to what the president is doing and the difference that he's making, you see that with his judicial appointments that are far different than anything we've seen when it comes to getting in good constitutional conservatives, very different than what we saw with former President Obama.
That is correct. It's much different than what we saw with former President Obama. We have from President Trump judges who want to stick to the Constitution and what the Constitution actually says. So they're originalists, and that includes the amendments to the Constitution, of course. And Yet with Obama, we had judges who were more willing to interpret the Constitution and make up rules and laws from the bench. But let's just think about how groundbreaking it was for Trump as a candidate to say, these are the people who I would nominate to the court. It was completely different and unlike what any other candidate had done before. And I hope that that winds up setting kind of a new precedent for people who are running for president so that we can see what kind of judges and who the potential judges would be before we make decisions at election time.
Well, and then we have people that no matter if President Trump nominated Gandhi, God rest his soul, they would say that Gandhi's an extremist.
Well, that's true, because we have people who are never Trump and they resist Trump at all costs, and they don't care that he is a duly elected president, that their fellow citizens elected him. They just want to stand in his way and do all that they can to resist him. And that's not how our country is supposed to be. You can resist policies, you can oppose policies, but to just resist a president simply because he was elected and anything that he says, no matter what, is it's simply not the way that our country is supposed to work. And it really shows the liberals' true colors, because they claim to be for tolerance, and yet they really are intolerant if you don't agree with them.
Indeed. Finally, what do you make of Joe Biden? And the reason why I say Joe Biden is you could see perhaps some of the never Trumpers, some of the people that, the Paul Ryan wing of the party saying, we can work with Joe Biden. We want to make sure that we get our party back. So we'll support Joe and get Trump out. Your thoughts on Joe Biden being the toughest out for President Trump?
Well, I think that that he may be a very formidable candidate if he is the nominee, but based on what you just said, we already saw that happen as some of those kind of people hoped that it would be Hillary and said they were not going to vote for Trump when he was just a candidate back in 2016. It did not work out so well with them then, and now Trump not only now Trump can run on his record and the accomplishments that he has, and I think that it means that there are going to be fewer never Trumpers in the Republican Party than there were in 2016.
Jenny Beth, anything else we should be looking out for?
I would just say that continue to be very involved. Next week, it looks like the Senate will be voting on some sort of an immigration deal for the $4.5 billion in funding that the president is requesting for border security. And just keep an eye on it and go to teapartypatriots.org for weekly calls to action.
Well, and then we've got the issue involving the House. What's going to happen with the House? So we've got the Senate figured out. We need to figure out the House.
That is correct. The House may actually I read from Congressman Chip Roy that he's hearing rumblings among Democrats that the House may even be willing to make a deal on border security. So we'll have to see how that pans out. And then on top of that, the House is in investigation mode, and we need to watch what they do when it comes to potentially voting to impeach the president. And if they try to do that, really put pressure on freshman congressmen who were elected from districts that Trump won, and remind them who they represent, and do all we can to prevent that from happening.
All right, Jenny Beth, you stay out of trouble.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you. All right. We appreciate Jenny Beth Martin, Tea Party Patriots Action. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Earlier this morning in the day, we talked about this, and we got, maybe people were asleep, but one of the most crazy, wacky, zany things the House of Representatives has done, and we warned you about this yesterday, was this issue involving, reparations. That's right, reparations. And today, America is more multicultural, more diverse than it's ever been, multiracial than it's ever been, right? So you have this group of crazy, wacky, zany libs that yesterday they were on a House panel. And by the way, it's been more than a decade since reparations were the topic of the debate on Capitol Hill. By the way, reparations meaning that you would pay descendants of slaves, if you could find them, if you could go to 23andme.com or whomever, and you would pay them money because they were brought here illegally and they were abused. Well, they weren't abused, but their ancestors were abused, right? So it's called H.R. 40, would not actually authorize reparations. It would authorize a study of lingering effects of slavery and explore the possible ways to pay reparations to descendants. Now, here's the funny thing about this, and it really shows you sometimes how desperate politicians are. You got Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, really all the usual suspects saying, yeah, reparations. Peace with Iran. Yeah, peace with Iran. Tax the rich. Yeah, tax the rich. They don't really stand for anything unique. They just want the vote. I guess they call that pandering. Anyway, here's some of the sounds of reparation talk yesterday. We would love to hear what you have to say at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. First, Louis Gohmert, who you hear on Sean Hannity's show quite a bit.
It is important that we know our history and we not punish people today for the sins of their predecessors in the Democratic Party. But I just stated all facts. And again, we have people who are denying history.
There we have it, of course, people, and it's the libs. It's the people that want to tear down America. It's the people that hate America that foster the civil unrest. Not the conservatives, not the people that love America. Here's the other side of the aisle. By the way, this person is an Episcopal priest who wasn't interrupted.
And when I'm talking for reparations, I'm talking about those left behind, but I'm actually talking to my white brothers and sisters. You need this more than we do. You need this for your soul. You need this to be able to look black persons in the eye and say, I acknowledge the mistake, and I want to be part of the solution to repair that damage.
So if you're white and you fought in the Civil War, if you're white and your relatives or whatever fought for civil rights, you're a second-class citizen in America, according to an Episcopal priest.
I just simply ask, why not? And why not now?
580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
So the moment you give me reparations, you've made me into a victim without my consent. Bill H.R. 40 is a moral and political mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Chill. He was presumptive, but he still has a right to speak.
There we have it. Coleman Hughes saying, look, reparations are insulting. Reparations are not the way to go. And you have, again, the devious little liberals. Well, they're just poor sports, right? Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So this House panel yesterday, H.R. 40, would authorize a committee to look into the lingering effects of slavery. Now, this came from an article in The Atlantic like several years ago. So then you have the author on and he's talking about these things. And you're thinking to yourself, really? Is that where we're going? Is that where we're going here? We're going back to slavery and reparations in the year of Facebook and Bitcoin? Doesn't make sense. I love what Coleman Hughes said here.
If we were to pay reparations today, we would only divide the country further, making it harder to build the political coalitions required to solve the problems facing black people today.
Facing all people today, David in Nampa with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. David, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much for taking my call. Other than hurting a lot of people and making a lot of people angry on both sides, this isn't going to do anything. First of all, God said, thou shalt not take vengeance on the children of thine enemies. Second of all, the Constitution says, there shall be no bill of attainder. There shall be no blood guilt. You know, my father never mentioned it until I got to college and learned about World War II. And that's the only time he ever talked about this. He was a slave, a Slavenarbeiter. If you wonder what the word slave came from, 1,000 years ago, they ran a Slav trade out of Central Europe down into Southern Europe. So, you know, was my father a Slav worker or a slave worker? Yes. He never dumped that garbage into my head. We went to a train museum, and my brother and I got in the cattle car. We were thinking this is where our hamburger came on the way to our plate. I can only imagine what he was thinking. Once he slipped in junior high, he said, you know how cattle cars, where it'll say 6 cows or 48 people? I said, no, what are you talking about? And boy, he clammed up. He didn't dump any of that pain in our head. And for these people to think that they have something that's a right, and they're never going to get it, and they're going to hate people for not giving what they think is theirs. Read Abraham Lincoln's inaugural for 1865. I dare you. Read that. Read 90 years later, and by the way, this is my father's 97th birthday, or it would have been. But 1974, there was another official apology for slavery. How about reparations? How about from the Democrats? They're the party of the Klan, the party of Jim Crow. And yes, 6 of their party platforms were supporting slavery. Why don't you sue them? You know, they're the party of Jim Crow. They were the party of, before they were doxing, they would go to a civil rights meeting and they'd get the license plates. And then the next day, the names and addresses of everybody there would be printed in the paper. You know, so the Democrats have always been the doxocrats. This is going to do nothing good, you know, and it's only causing aggro. And I think when we went to Hitler's hideout in over Salzburg, you know, they call it Berchtesgaden. It's the eagle's nest. I think of the dignity and the grace that my dad showed. He could have been there. You know, you look up in the elevator and you see where they hook the chains on for the slave workers. My God, these people. And they do it not because they think they're going to get it. They do it for exploitation.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome, sir.
Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave. Let's go to Ramona in Nampa with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Ramona, good morning.
Hi, Kevin. I know it's been a long time. First of all, I just want to say I enjoyed President Trump's rally. I wish I could have been there in Florida, or Orlando, Florida. Wasn't that amazing?
Me too.
And about reparations, yeah, I've watched some clips about it. I wasn't fortunate to sit and watch it all afternoon, but when it was on. But, you know, no, they should not get anything. That was a long time ago. Those people are gone. And I just applaud the young, especially the young black men. I think he was on saying, you know, nobody owes me anything. And I know I'm not talking like some people, big words, but my grandparents came here legally from Mexico, and they worked hard, never got any type of benefits. They never got food stamps. They worked hard. And then my parents were born here in California, and they worked hard. No, nothing. My dad paid for the first medical bill, my brother's birth. He paid for the whole thing. So this thing of getting things is ridiculous. And the hate on the left. You are so right. Sometimes I just have to turn it off, Kevin, especially on the weekends. They have terrible news on the weekend, except in the evening on Sunday. And you know who I'm talking about.
I do.
The great ones in the late evening. But, you know, it's just sad. I never got anything for free either. I worked hard for all my life. I'm 64, almost 65. And I'm proud of what I've done. And my parents never taught me to hate anyone. There was one incident, my dad got upset because I talked to a black young man on the phone when I was a teenager. And, you know, nobody's perfect, but he didn't hate black people. But my mom always taught me, you know, make sure you work hard and go to college and make sure you have good education in case something happens in your marriage. That was the only thing she ever told me. But everything was positive, work hard. And I worked all my life. I hardly ever called in sick unless I couldn't stand up, because of illness, flu, colds. It gets the best of us. But, I am just so tired of everybody saying, I need this, I need that, especially the socialist ideas. And this, I believe it's never going to happen in my lifetime, but it might happen in our children's lifetime, Kevin. But I don't know. I just keep praying, Kevin. I just keep praying for our nation and for our president and for all conservatives. Sometimes you have people I don't agree with that PAC, what's their name? Oh, Ollie Pack, I think it's called.
Oh,
Not
William
fair.
Dean, yes. Bill
Yeah,
Dean,
I do not agree with him. I'm voting for President Trump. He's been trying hard to build that wall. He's been trying to take care of things here in our nation to protect us. And it is a travesty what's happening at the border. It truly is. And this summer I'm getting in my firearm so I can protect myself,
Right.
And because there's just too much happening as far as that goes on the southern border.
Well, Ramona, we got to run, but thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye. Good to talk to you again. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Rolling right along on the right side. Patriot Ray, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller.
Good morning, Idaho, and all of my friends who are listening to KIDO Radio with Kevin Miller. Hey, have a good day. What a wonderful day it is. But one thing I would really like is I would like to get some reparations for all of my Irish ancestors who were held as slaves. So let's get everybody rewarded, okay? I'm sure we all have some there.
Everybody's a victim.
Oh, why not? I mean, that's what they're doing. Everybody says, I need this and I need that, but nobody wants to really give to the country that is so great and has done so much for the people all over the world, not just here. And yet they're still screaming and hollering they didn't get enough. They need more. They can't get everything. They want free education. They want to have free housing. They want free radios and TVs.
Well,
I mean,
here, let me hit you with this one. Let's, by the way, for people just tuning in, H.R. 40, which was debated yesterday on the House floor through a special committee. This is a reaction from an Episcopal minister.
And when I'm talking for reparations, I'm talking about those left behind, but I'm actually talking to my white brothers and sisters. You need this more than we do. You need this for your soul. You need this to be able to look black persons in the eye and say, I acknowledge the mistake, and I want to be part of the solution to repair that damage.
For your soul.
I was not part of the mistake. None of my ancestors were. And I think that's totally wrong. I have really great black friends that I love like my brother. And I am so grateful for them because they understand. We all work for what we really want, and we all deserve what we get when we worked for it, not just handouts. You can't cry victim your whole life. You've got to stand up and do something. No one's ever given me anything except my parents, and they gave me the right to work and gave my father gave me a really good work ethic, and I worked hard all my life, and I continue to do it. I'm not about to give up. I want to keep going forward. I want my children and grandchildren to know that their grandfather and father worked hard all his life and gave them a good work ethic. So let's do that. Let's quit playing the victim.
Patriot Ray, thank you for the call.
God bless you. You have a great day, Kevin. We love you. Take care.
God bless. We love you too. Thank you, Patriot Ray. Jeremy in Meridian with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Kevin. How are we doing today?
Living the dream, and you?
Oh, doing the same, living the dream. So, hey, this whole HR 40 thing, what about people of faith? Because there's a certain, Christian religion that was kicked out of state and state and state and state. So, do their descendants get to get something for, for what the government did to them? Patriot Ray saying the same thing about his Irish ancestors. So, yeah, let's just give it to everybody. Just how about we just acknowledge it and, you know what? People are not perfect. People have made mistakes, and we can learn from it. Let's not repeat it. But let's just move forward as adults, grow up a little bit, quit begging for everything and just move forward.
Agreed. Jeremy, thank you for the call.
Hey. All right. Thanks, Kevin. Have a great day.
You too. Appreciate it. Lee Joe joins us now. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Lee Joe.
Good morning, Kevin. I just needed to jump in line here for my reparations. My grandmother was many generations back in 1730 was sent to the United States as an indentured servant from England due to being persecuted religiously and given the opportunity to have the death sentence or become an indentured servant in the United States. So, and while we're at it, natives, they need reparations. And I think anybody that's ever been a victim of capitalism probably needs reparations. If it kind of looked a lot more like a tax cut, that would be really good. Reparations for everybody for paying too much in taxes. That's what I think we need.
Thank you, Lee Joe. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Appreciate you. If you're just tuning in, yesterday the House debating H.R. 40 would not authorize reparations. It would seek to authorize a committee to find out how much people should pay for reparations. 2020 Democratic presidential hopeful Senator Cory Booker told the panel that the country has yet to truly acknowledge and grapple with the racism and white supremacy that has tainted this country's history, from a person who's a United States senator.
It's about time we find the common ground and the common purpose to deal with the ugly past.
Cory Booker, aren't we proud of him? Now, on the other hand, you had former NFL great Burgess Owens saying this about who should pay who.
I do not believe in reparation, because what reparation does, it points to a certain race, a certain color, and it points them as evil, and points the other race, my race, as one that is not only becomes racist, but also beggars.
We go to John in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, John.
Yes, good morning, Kevin. Thank you. I just wanted to say that slavery has not caused the black community to have children born out of wedlock at 73%, or to have astronomical high school dropout rates, or to be on generations of welfare because they've been brainwashed into the government taking care of them, or to commit crimes at a rate that is well above their representation in the United States as a whole. 13% of the population, but 50% of violent crime and so forth. That has nothing to do with slavery. They are enslaving themselves by not behaving, but it's the culture, I believe, the music, I believe. All these things contribute to, it would happen to anyone or any group if, what I'm trying to say is I don't think slavery that ended 150 years ago is responsible right now for a lot of the ills in the black community. Why don't the Democrat politicians who keep these people on welfare and keep them dependent on the government look at themselves in the mirror and say, what have they done for them? With all of the economic success that we've had, still 75 or 80% voted Democrat in the elections 2 years ago. So it doesn't even matter about economic prosperity. They're brainwashed by the Democrat Party. And then I just don't see how anything like this would even come to help. And then when you take into account that there were black slave owners, and what about a guy like Shaquille O'Neal? What is he owed? Say he can trace his roots back to slave times. Is he owed reparations? And another thing, my ancestors came from Greece and Italy, and I know for a fact that Algerian and Moroccan pirates of the Islamic faith used to raid the southern coast of Greece and Italy, rape the women, force you to convert and then if you didn't, bring you back to Algeria and Morocco as slaves. So, I mean, that was the way the world was back then. It's not the way the world is now. And for that preacher, that you want to call him a preacher, to invoke God, God says the greatest commandment is to love him with all your heart. I don't think your soul is going to be spared because God's going to say, okay, you paid so-and-so an amount in reparations. I think this is way too crazy, and it's just going to drive people even further apart. And unfortunately, I feel that black people are being used as pawns by the Democratic Party once again, and they don't even realize it.
John, thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio. We appreciate your call.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Tea Party Bob, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Tea Party Bob.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. It's a great show this morning, by the way. I believe the only people who deserve reparations are the veterans' families whose loved ones died, and they were waiting to get medical care from the Veteran Services. Outside of that, I've been listening to your ideas, your listeners' ideas about how to solve the problem with high taxes, housing prices, and not enough roads. You know, many of your listeners have some interesting ideas. When it comes right down to it, Treasure Valley's become discovered by the world, and just like any other destination place, it's going through a supply and demand problem that will continue until pricing reaches the point where it becomes so ridiculous it no longer becomes a destination. You know, but compared to places like Seattle, San Francisco, and New York, we are a bargain to most people who live in those places and that are trying to escape. And they're coming here, and they are causing the higher taxes and the escalating housing and the price of congestion. You know, it's interesting to see Meridian raising impact fees, although they're about 5 years too late. They're not going to catch up with the building fast enough to give the city more money for the infrastructure needed. And when it comes right down to it, what we really need is for the politicians to stop spending and approving new building like drunken sailors. Until they do, taxes are going to continue to climb. Infrastructure will not catch up for a long time. You know, it comes back to the old saying, if you give a politician a nickel in taxes, they will spend a dime hoping for more. For instance, the 10-mile urban renewal project, which you know I protested, where the infrastructure is financed by our tax dollars, but it means more building, more congestion, and higher taxes. So what are we doing? We're financing our own higher taxes, higher congestion, and more building. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. It's a vicious cycle, and they don't seem to know how to end it. You know, the supply-demand problem is going to eventually work itself out. But in the meantime, it's going to change this great place we live in, and it's going to dislocate many people who have lived here all their lives in the Treasure Valley. The growth will stop when prices get too high and congestion becomes unbearable and taxes crush people who don't have upward mobility on their incomes. Just a quick note for those who are worried about the elderly and high taxes. Idaho does have something called a circuit breaker for taxes for homeowners, and they can apply for it if they meet certain income criteria. And that circuit breaker can cut your taxes by half or more. Now, my solution to the higher tax and congestion is to move to a place where there are lower taxes and zero congestion. But you can't escape the high cost of housing except to build a new home yourself and do a lot of the work yourself, because the laborers in the areas, even places like I've moved, are so high that they're even higher than what they cost in the Treasure Valley. So there's not a lot of answers to the problem.
Well, maybe you shouldn't have left.
No, I'm very happy here. To be very honest with you, the people are great. It's nice living right now in a 500-acre cattle ranch, and I have to tell you, I enjoy the cows in the pasture instead of the cars in front of my house.
Well, we miss you here, old friend. Take care.
We miss you too, my friend. You have a great day.
Our great friend, Tea Party Bob. Robert in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Kevin. Hey, I have a little bit different twist on this reparations. Number one, many of the blacks that were brought here were bought by blacks. And the other thing is if they take a look at where they would be had they not been brought to the United States, maybe they should be paying reparations to us because we've increased their chances of a decent life.
You won't hear that one in Congress.
Well, I just got to thinking about that. I mean, they came from third world countries. Those countries are still third world countries. Where would they be today?
Not as well off as they are in America.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Bye.
Bye-bye. And really, let me just say this about Robert's thoughts. It's not us versus them, but that's what the liberals want to do. That's what they continue to try to do, whether it's to take out Donald Trump, to take out Kevin Miller, to squash dissent, to pit people against each other. America is great when we look at our sports, our entertainment. We're colorblind. When we look at people's character, it's only when we have people, agitators, stirring things up that we pause. The idea, whether it was Normandy, whether it was in Europe, whether it was in Kandahar, you have people in the military, and their uniform's green. The color of their skin is green. Fighting for a cause greater than themselves. So different from what we heard on the House floor. More coming up next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you, Ray Amaya. Appreciate your great work. By the way, let's see if we can scoop the top of the hour newscast on Fox.
In a 7-2 decision, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled a World War I memorial in the shape of a cross in Maryland can remain on public land. The High Court rejected a challenge from the American Humanist Association, which argued the monument violated separation of church and state. Maryland officials who took over maintenance of the memorial claimed the cross has a secular purpose and meaning. Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sonia Sotomayor dissented. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
Great victory, 7-2 to keep that cross. Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning. Good morning, Dave. And rolling to Rosie with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Rosie, good morning.
Good morning. I'm a little puzzled by something. What was affirmative action intended to accomplish? And
affirmative action was intended to accomplish the end of institutional discrimination against minorities and women.
Well, didn't that include our black friends?
Well, yes, all minorities, right?
And primarily, they've benefited primarily because I lived through it. Also, they seem to be discriminating now against other slaves that were brought in, particularly the Chinese that were brought in to build the railroads over the Sierra Mountains.
Well, what would you do with the Chinese? That's right.
So there are many people in this country who have not been treated fairly, and they've picked themselves up from their bootstraps, and they've succeeded. And I think that was represented yesterday at those hearings, and the poor man got booed. It's ridiculous. People can succeed from very poor beginnings if they try.
You're right, and we're inspired by their quest for excellence, and people that come to this country with nothing, and they leave as millionaires. Rosie, God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, don't go anywhere, anybody. Glenn Beck is next. Looking forward to Glenn Beck. Don't forget Treasure Valley God and Country Festival coming up Wednesday. Saturday, Boise Music Festival. Hope to see it both. God bless. Keep the faith.